fellow crafters. I hope you are enjoying a beautiful end of summer. Hope you're being able to enjoy a little fun in the sun, maybe some farm stands, maybe some summery produce. I gotta say, I've been enjoying all of those things lately, but the temperatures have definitely been on the warm side. Like very warm. That means that I've been wanting to bust out all of my favorite hot weather clothing items, such as, of course, well, vintage muumuus, some of my favorite thrift store finds. I've even refashioned muumuus before, and they're super comfy to wear. They're so fun and bright. I love them. Another piece of very summery clothing that I adore and I come back to over and over again is the caftan dress. Have you seen these online? Do a little Google search. There are a lot of styles that go kind of in the caftan dress category, but in general, caftans are made of flowy, breathable fabric. They are a dress, but they don't tend to have a lot of fitted shape to them. They are designed to basically help you create your own air conditioning and look very fabulous and somewhat glam while being pretty darn comfortable, especially when it's hot outside. And if you could make these things easily without too much sewing, that's my kind of project right now. I'm going to be making some caftan dresses. Some of you guys may remember I have made some of these dresses a couple times before. I will link to some of those projects down below. I made a couple last summer. I actually made 2 different styles, and my sister was a great sport and she joined the channel that day and we modeled some caftan dresses, and that project was so much fun. I've also made a vintage style caftan dress based on a 1920s pattern. That was pretty fabulous, not gonna lie. I felt like a 1920s heiress in that dress. I'll link to that below. But today's project, I am going to be making the most basic style caftan I can possibly make. It's basically a long piece of fabric folded in half with a hole for your head and 2 side seams with holes for your arms. Not a lot of sewing involved, which is right about up my alley this time of year. I was lucky enough to visit some of my friends this summer and they were such good sports. One friend agreed to model some caftans. Another friend agreed to film and help us find a location. So a big shout out to Catherine and Inga for helping inspire today's video and help make it happen. We had so much fun. It was a total blast, and I want to walk you through this caftan dressmaking project in case you want to make one of your own. Let me show you what we're working with. We'll talk you through the pattern and how to do it, and let's get started. Caftancore! Okay, here is the sketchy sketch of our basic caftan. Woo! And you guys, this doesn't get much more basic than this. Honestly, you're starting with a long piece of fabric and you fold it in half. The fold is right where your shoulders are going to be. And then you cut a hole for the neckline in the middle. At that point, you basically have a poncho. You know, your head goes here, you have a flap of fabric hanging down in the back and a flap hanging down in the front. And then to turn it into a dress, you just sew 2 seams that will go on either side of your body. Your body goes right in the middle. And then it's a dress because your arms come out here, your body's here, and yeah, you have a garment. If you want to add a little bit of shape, you can make 2 large kind of like buttonholes in the extra flowy fabric to the sides of your seams, and then tie a little belt that could kind of go around the middle and like cinch the fabric in a little bit. This extra fabric is still going to be super flowy. I like to not sew my seams all the way to the bottom of the dress because I like to have basically like slits at the side, which also adds super drapey, flowy, air conditioniness to this garment. And then with the neckline, you could make a neck facing, you know, like kind of a wider band of fabric to go around the neck, Or I oftentimes cheat and just use single fold bias tape and sew that around the neckline. I have some measurements on this page because I have made these a few times before, and yes, I still love them. And for me, I find it's really helpful to kind of measure the middle of the fabric as you're going. And then I like to have at least 13 inches on either side of the middle. So about 26 plus inches total in between my seams. I definitely, to kind of get this estimate, I measured the widest part of me and kind of figured out how much fabric I needed to go over that and leave some extra. And then I just stitched some seams and tried it on. You know, I kind of just used a big basting stitch, didn't do anything permanent. Tried it on, see if I liked it. You could bring the seams in closer to your body. You could bring them farther away. Just play around with it. And another thing I had to play around with was how big did I need this gap at the top for my arms? You know, the kind of an armhole. Like I don't want it too low under my arm, but I also don't want it too high. For me, that distance for my armhole is about 9 inches. So this is the basic pattern I'm going to be working off of, and I'm going to be using this for both my caftan and for my friend's caftan, but then I will be adjusting these distances a little bit to fit her. And I think for her caftan, she would like knee length, I think, and I will probably be doing the same. So it'll probably look a lot like this picture. Okay, now it's time for the fabric contemplation. Oh my word. Okay, so my fabric bin is usually much better organized than this, but I pulled out some pieces of fabric that I have like big enough pieces of and had enough drape to them to make a caftan. Oh, I love this rayon. But I kind of pulled out some choices and I photographed them, sent them to my friend to see which ones she's gonna choose. I can't wait to hear what she chooses, because honestly, a lot of these are like cottons. These would be super light and kind of drapey. The rayon is like one of my favorites for caftans because it's like super drapey and breathable. Then I have to choose what I want, but I'm gonna wait to see what she picks first, and then I have some refolding to do. So my friend picked this kind of minty green cotton, which I'm really excited about because I basically bought it for the color, and I'm glad she's loving it too. It's I think the perfect size piece for a caftan. There wasn't enough to do a huge project with, but I knew I had to have it. So then I've been going through the stash trying to find maybe like ideas for a contrasting belt. I'm not sure what she's gonna pick. I'm gonna send her a video here in a second, but oh man, I mean, I'm loving the gingham. Could be super cute. This one's the brown gingham. That would totally give it like a mint chocolate chip vibe, but definitely a little more of a contrast. Now, I know this is like a really different color, but this like cranberry fabric is basically the same kind of fabric. So that could be fun. And then, of course, I love me some strawberries. The green is a little different. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a little bit more olive than this, but I mean, pretty cute. And then, oh my gosh, I love this stuff. It's a little bright, a little vibrant. Not sure what she's gonna pick. I'm thinking this is pretty fun. I think for mine, honestly, I'm really kind of feeling like the brown gingham, because the piece that I have is, again, it's not quite big enough to do a really big full skirted dress project, and I know that fabric is super breezy. So hello gingham. Gingham for the win, you guys. I don't know, I'm gonna play around with ideas. I may kind of do like a reverse of what my friend's doing. So if she's doing like a solid with a printed belt, maybe I'll do like a printed with a solid. I'm not sure. I'm almost liking the brown gingham with the strawberry print, even though the colors are different. Both have like that really dark background. Lots of choices. Okay, well, I'll let you know what she picks. I got our fabric all ironed and it is folded in half. The foldy bit is up there. And the piece of fabric I'm working with is about 42 inches wide. So if you kind of measure the fold, it's about 42 inches, kind of a standard piece. And then the length of half of it is about 46 inches or so. So I've trimmed this down so that I'm hoping this will be about close to my friend's desired knee length. But of course, I left some extra fabric for hemming, and I may get some updated measurements for her on the length she's interested in. So right now, it is a big rectangle, folded in half, and we need to fold it in half one more time before we can get started. Okay, fabric fold accomplished. So you can tell that this fabric is now, in quarters? Sorry, math. Whoa. But we do have a fold at the top, and then we have a new fold right along the middle. That middle fold is going to be really helpful to us because we're going to gauge our side seams off of that middle. We're going to put our neck hole in according to that middle line. And so my first step right now is I'm going to use my washable and disappearing fabric pen, and I'm just going to do little marks along this folded center seam, just so that I've got that as a gauge. And then up at the top, I need to cut a small hole for my neck, my head to fit through. At this point, I'm just going to cut that hole kind of small enough to fit my head, and that's about it. Learn from my mistakes. I have definitely made that too big before, and it kind of throws off the rest of the garment. So right now, I just need it kind of big enough to fit my head. I'm going to use another garment as a template, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, we're going to get up close and personal here. I am looking at the center fold of our caftan, and I've made some very sketchy disappearing pen marks along that fold so that I don't lose track of that center. Now this is another caftan that I made last year. You might remember it from my Caftancore video I did with my sister. Fun project, by the way. I will link to that down below. I had a lot of fun with that. My sister was a great sport. She also wore caftans with me, and I love this caftan. So I'm going to use its neckline to help me kind of just estimate the neck hole that I'm using, except this neckline is a little bit too big. Like, it doesn't look that big, for half of a neckline here. But on me, it's a little big. So I think I'm going to be using my fabric pen. I'll probably be marking in a little bit, maybe about an inch from this, and kind of just tracing along this back neckline, and then I'll cut out the hole from there. I don't want to trace this front neckline yet because I want the front neckline to be a little lower than the back. And if I cut out the whole thing to the big measurement, probably going to make it too big. Have I done that before? Yes. Learn from my mistakes. So I'll be using this neckline to kind of make some sketches. I'll probably move my pen marks in a little bit, maybe about an inch from here and like half an inch from there, and just mark that along, and then I can cut out the hole for the neck. So here's the back neckline hole traced, and here it is cut out. That's not very big. It's probably not going to be quite big enough for me to get this over my head. So I think I am going to trim the front neckline just a little bit so that I can put this thing on. Hang on, let me change the fabric around and show you what I'm doing next. Well, now we're looking at the front. Of course, we've got our center fold right there. We have our neck hole. And I think I want my front neckline to be at least this much bigger than the back. So in order to help me cut that out symmetrically, I'm going to fold my fabric along this front line, and then
Then I can use my sketch to kind of cut a symmetrical line on both sides. Let me refold it and show you what I'm talking about. Well, I refolded the fabric. Right now you're seeing the fold right down that middle line. And we've got our neck hole here. There's the back neck hole. And I've got everything all lined up, and I've sketched out, just double checking the sketch there for where I think I want the front neckline to be. And I'm going to trim that. I feel like I might want to cut it more later, but I know from past mistakes not to make it too big. Hopefully I won't do that again. I'm going to trim that front neckline, and then we're going to refold everything flat and work on those seams. And we're back. We got the neck hole trimmed a little bit, and now we have a whole bunch of lines. Oh my goodness, yeah, we're looking back at the front of the garment. Let's do a little turn-a-roo here. This is where it is super helpful to have that center marked. Is it also really helpful to mark the center of like the shoulder fold where that should be? Yep, totally forgot about that. It's really helpful when you're folding and unfolding and trying to estimate where seams go and making necklines centered and everything, to have just those things marked. So they're now marked for me. And I have been using my handy dandy quilting ruler, or rotary cutter ruler, and my pen to help me out here. Now, I did some math, big brain math, and I figured out roughly where the side seam should be for my friend's measurement. I'm going to be using that same 9-inch arm gap that I'm using for myself, so there will be no sewing here. Let's take a look. Can you see this line better? Yeah, there's the center. Here's the seam line. And it starts about 9 inches from the top of the shoulder, and it doesn't quite go to the bottom. I'm not totally sure the finished length of this garment, but I left about 10 inches from the bottom. I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to trim this a little bit. So say I trim off a couple inches and maybe make a hem. This will leave just a little bit of a slit at the bottom. So I think we got this all marked up as much as we need to. I'm going to, let's see here. Ooh, turn around a little bit here. Get out my sewing machine and sew those side seams. And then once that's done, I'll be able to try this on and see if that neck hole needs to be adjusted. I might, if I was making this for me, I could also decide if I liked where the side seams were placed or not, and I could change it. I could also judge the length, see if I like it or not, and then after that, we're pretty close. I mean, great project, right? Simple is good. After that, I just have to put some single fold bias tape around the neckline. Okay, well, let's not get ahead of myself. It's time for seaming. Let's do that first. Well, as I'm pinning here so that I can sew these side seams, I was kind of thinking through the math that I used to determine just how much space I want between the side seams. And for my measurement, I think what I did was I basically figured out, okay, what's the circumference of the widest part of me? And for me, that's my hips and butt. So I got that measurement, and then I added, I think it was about 15 inches to that. And that's basically how much fabric I wanted going all the way around my body to totally fit my body, and then have a bunch of breathing room so the garment could flow. And then once I have that big number of, okay, widest part of me plus like 15, whole bunch of extra inches, take that big number and then just divide it. I divided it in half. Okay, so I want half of that amount to be the fabric in the front, and then the other half to be the fabric in the back. That's just what worked for me. Honestly, the way I figured it out at first was to just try it, you know, sew up some side seams and try it on. If I don't like it, I could always take out the stitching and move them. But I think we're looking pretty good here. Time to do a little sewing. Well, we have side seams. I don't know if you can see that, but we also have some other things going on. I did try this dress on, and then I trimmed the neckline a little bit bigger in the front until I got it to where I like it. And now we've got some bias tape going on here. All right, let's take a look. I've got some single fold bias tape. This stuff is cool. If you have never used this stuff before, I would totally recommend just look up a YouTube video on how to sew with single fold bias tape. Somebody explaining it really clearly with up close pictures, because this stuff is kind of cool. For finishing edges without having to like roll hems and things. The fabric from the bias tape basically is used to enclose the raw edge of the fabric. So, making a nice edge. I'm using some little clips. These are helpful, but you can also use pins. I've opened up the tape a little bit. So you know, it used to be folded like that, but then I've opened up the top fold and I clipped it all the way around. I've kind of got, oh, very hard to see. Kind of have a folded under edge over here. So that's going all the way around the neck. And then I'm going to do what they call stitch in the ditch. And see this ditch or this little fold line right up here? I'm going to stitch following that ditch all the way around. So stitching the bias tape to the fabric underneath. And then once that's done, I'm going to have, you know, this kind of flappy bit of the bias tape left over. I'm going to use that to then wrap under and kind of finish the edge. Sounds a little silly right now. That's okay. I'm going to sew it and then flip it under and pin it again and show you how that goes. But again, totally just look up a video on this too if you've never tried this before, because it may change your life. Single fold bias tape for the win. You guys, we are almost there. You can tell we got the neck line in there. Hard to see the side seams. We've got that. I did get the length measurement from my friend, so I've measured that. I just made a little rolled hem here. Yeah, just took the fabric, rolled it up a little bit, and then rolled it again. And I'm just gonna stitch right near that fold. Make a lovely little hem. Okay, we've got to make the holes for the belt. So, kind of hard to see. I've got little marks on each side, just on the outside edge of my side seams. And I'm going to make 2 buttonholes in those little marks. And that's where the belt is going to thread through to tie around your waist. Let's take a little peek here at what we're doing. So I got my friend's kind of waist measurement, or like high waist. Where would she like to wear a belt? And we measured down from the shoulder seam to that point. And I made a little mark here. This mark, it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if we can get a little closer. All right, so this mark is about 1/2 inch away from my side seam. I don't want to make it too far away. I also don't want to make it right on that side seam. So I've measured in about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to start my buttonhole here, and it's going to go down probably about, I think the biggest buttonhole that my machine makes is about 1.5 inches, 1.25 or so. I'm going to be using this crazy looking contraption. My buttonhole foot. My goodness gracious. If you have not used one of these before, they look a little wacky. I would suggest looking up a video how to use buttonhole foot for your make and model of sewing machine. If your machine isn't too old, you may actually find a video that's specific for your machine. Or if you look around, you may be able to just find one that kind of looks similar to your model, or at least the same brand, and it'll kind of talk you through it. Of course, your sewing machine manual will have that info too, but I do love me a good video. I always get a little confuzzled with these guys. I have to take my time. I always do a couple test ones on some fabric. Sometimes if my fabric is really lightweight, I'll put some iron-on interfacing on the back side to try to help it feed through the darn buttonhole foot better. I think our fabric here is pretty substantial, so I don't think we need the interfacing with this one. But yeah, got my mark over there on that seam, or that side. Got my other buttonhole mark over here. Here's my side seam, about 1/2 inch to the side of that. I'll be starting here and going down. Okay, you guys, well, I am going to get to buttonholing and then hemming, and then I need to make my caftan. So I got a little more sewing left. Oh, and I need to make the belt. Sorry, need to make the belt. There's some more sewing to go here, you guys, but we are getting pretty close. So, hey, while I'm working on that, this is a good time for you guys. Give this video a thumbs up if you get behind the Caftancore concept, or just making your own summer stuff. What do you think? Do you get behind the idea? Do you like it? Is it fun? Can be a little stressful sometimes, but end of the day, can be a lot of fun too. All right, well, I'm going to get to sewing, and I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. Well, speaking of sewing, let's just take a look at those buttonholes. Here we go. Excellent. There's my side seam here, buttonholes on the side. You can see there are two. Where's the other one? There it is. We're going to thread the belt through those holes and be able to cinch the garment around the waist. However, we have not addressed the edges of the fabric here or here, and I apologize for that. I didn't mention it because on my fabric, that is the selvage edge of the fabric. That's the finished edge, where it comes off of the, the bolt. This is finished. I don't have any, like, markings or words along the selvage edge of my fabric, so I'm just gonna leave this. I don't have to hem it. I don't have to do anything. It's just finished already. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest perks of the caftan, is you're kind of utilizing the fabric as it is and just using those finished edges. Of course, if you're working with a fabric that maybe doesn't have a nice selvage, or maybe it has like writing in the selvage, you can always just hem the edges. Or I've worked with a piece of fabric that was way too wide, and I ended up cutting in the sides a little bit and hemming the edges just to make it fit my body better. So those are two options, but I apologize again. That's why I didn't mention the edges of the fabric, because, well, I don't really have to do anything to it. However, speaking of things that do need to be done, yeah, the observant among you will have noticed that I mentioned my hem was just a rolled hem, and I showed it pinned. However, previously, in my previous video, moments ago, I had this rolled hem, this roll, on the front of the garment. It's supposed to be on the inside like this, so that when you stitch along this lovely hem, you're not seeing this folded over bit. Unless you want to see like a cuff on the outside. I mean, that's cool, but not for the outside of this dress. So, yeah. Did I just sew that wrong? Have to pick it out and then have to roll this hem again and re-sew it? Yep, sure did. Don't make my mistake, you guys. Learn from my goofs. Let's zoom out a little bit. Yeah, you should not be seeing that roll of the hem, because it should be on the inside of the garment, not the outside. Did I make that same mistake possibly on the caftan I've been also working on for myself? Yeah, possibly. I may not fix that one. This one I'm going to fix. So learn from my goofs, guys. Learn from my goofs. I'm going to go fix that hem. I also have a little extra fabric here. I've also cut out a narrow strip of fabric for the belt. So I need to sew that belt up, and, you know, I may end up using some of that extra fabric to make a, I don't know, matching scrunchie or something. Perks to making your own clothes. You could use remnants to make, like, hair accessories and stuff. Is that too matchy-matchy? The simple answer is no. Never. Okay, back to sewing. Back to sewing. Belt time! I cut 2 strips of fabric from the remnants left over. Each strip is about 2 3/4 inches wide, and they are as long as the fabric is from selvage to selvage. You can tell I've stitched 2 of them together, and then I'm in the process of folding this fabric in half and pinning them so then I can stitch along this edge and make a giant tube. And turn that tube right sides out, sew up the ends, and I will have a belt. Yay, belt! Now it's gingham time! Whoa! I've picked out some chocolate brown and white gingham for my caftan, and I'm basically repeating the same process all over again. You can see I got the neckline cut out, I got the center line marked, and those side seams are pinned. They are ready to sew, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for mine. So these will be kind of twinsy design caftans once we wear them, and I think that'll be a blast. Well, you guys, I've got to get sewing, and then I got to pack these for my trip to see my friend, and then we'll show you what they look like when we're done. Oh, hi again, guys. Just a brief buttonhole update. I've marked where I want my buttonhole to be. I'm probably going to make it about, I don't know, 1/2 inch from the side seam. But I realized that this gingham fabric is really lightweight. And I want that buttonhole to be as stable as possible. I don't want it to rip out of the fabric. So I put just like a small piece of iron-on interfacing. Here's what I used. Just on one layer of the fabric, and hopefully, you know, when the buttonhole happens here, that interfacing will be sandwiched inside and make the whole thing a little stronger. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I'm going to try that. I know I've done that when I have made caftans out of really floaty fabric or like silky, shiny fabric. It can be really helpful to reinforce some of those seams because sometimes the fabric can rip. On one occasion, when I did my 1920s caftan, oh, by the way, I'll link to that. Fun project. Very similar design, just 1920s style. When I did that project, I actually reinforced this seam because I was using super silky fabric. So I actually sandwiched a line of seam binding underneath this line just because I was really afraid that the silky fabric would fray at the side seams. So that's just an idea. I mean, these are really fun in floaty fabrics, so, you know, if you gotta add a little strength, that's a couple ideas how to do that. Okay, back to sewing.